Good afternoon. Today's dissertation lecture recital will focus on the complete solo piano works of Zhou. First, I will provide background information on the composer and his solo piano works. Then, I will provide my own observation on these pieces, include further insight from an interview I conducted with the composer, and perform each piece individually. Zhou was born in 1953 and is a contemporary composer of Chinese American descent. He belongs to a generation of Chinese composers that began introducing traditional Chinese music to Western audience. Through the musical effort of this generation of Chinese composers, most notably Tan Dun and Bright Sheng, interested in Chinese music, continued to grow in the West. Zhou was born in Beijing, grew up in an artistic family, and began studying piano from a young age. In 1978, Zhou entered the Central Conservatoire of Music in Beijing in the first group of students after the Cultural Revolution. After earning a bachelor degree in composition in 1983, Zhou continued his study in Columbia University from 1985 to 1993 and completed his doctoral degree program in composition. He gained international recognition after receiving the 2011 Pulitzer Prize for his opera Madame Wet Snake. Zhou is recognized for bringing together the aesthetic concept and musical elements of Eastern and Western music, fascinated by the sound and techniques of ancient Chinese music. He incorporates all types of Chinese traditional folk, philosophical and spiritual ideas into Western idioms. Zhou has written more than 50 compositions. Although he has written only 4 solo piano pieces, 18 of his chamber and orchestral works include piano and frequently in a prominent role. At the time of this lecture recital, Zhou has published 4 solo piano pieces and 1 piano concerto. Despite becoming internationally renowned after receiving the 2011 Pulitzer Prize, Zhou's piano music is rarely considered in the artistic or scholarly circles. Very few performances, recordings, and publications currently exist on Zhou's piano music, either in China or internationally. Additionally, until now, no artist has recorded or performed a complete collection of Zhou's solo piano piece. The 4 pieces are Mongolian folk tune variations, Wu Kui, piano gongs, and piano bells. Zhou's piano music features several signature characteristics. He makes use of unconventionally extended piano technique in all but his earliest work, Mongolian folk tune variations. The result is innovative sound qualities, unusual percussive effects, and multi-layered overtone that create an ethereal atmosphere. Zhou often imitates and evokes Chinese traditional music, both percussive and melodic. He also likes to make connections with other art genres, like ancient poetry, painting, and literature, along with aesthetic Taoism and Buddhism concepts. The prominence of percussive elements in Zhou's music is of a great importance. Notably, piano gong exploits 2 Chinese opera gongs, and the pianist must play the percussion instruments and the piano at the same time. Through the combined presentation and lecture of performance of Zhou's complete piano pieces, I intend to help bring exposure to these neglected works and to serve as a guide for piano students and teachers interested in exploring Zhou's piano music. Additionally, I hope to reveal Zhou's unique music voices to the Western audience. I will start with a discussion of the earliest solo piano piece by Zhou, Mongolia Folk Tune Variations. Zhou's earliest work, Mongolia Folk Tune Variations, is more conservative and has gained attention and performance exposure. For this reason, less time will spend discussing this work, and more focus will be put on the later works. Composed during his second year of study at CCMB, the Mongolian folk tune variation utilized the Western classical compositional forms and structures, and began incorporating and blending these elements with those from Chinese traditions. In particular, he acquired knowledge of Mongolian folk music through his study and visit to rural areas. While this work is rooted in Romantic era traditions, the original theme, along with several of the variations, are molded in the style of a Chinese folk tune. General observations. This piece is in theme and variation form. The theme, as shown in example 1, is based on an 8 major melody, and appears in its entirety within the first 3 variations in the coda. Variation 4 through 8 are also based on the melodic idea derived from the theme. The piece could have finished with the climaxed variation 8 finale. However, the composer instead ended with a coda that is the transformed restatement of the original theme. See example 2. Although the piece has a sense of tonality, there is no key signature. The work starts in B minor, modulates to many other keys through the use of accidentials, and also exploit the Chinese pentatonic scales. Overall, the texture is quite thick. Contrapuntal techniques and 4-part readings are used extensively, especially in the first 3 variations in the coda. Harmonies are often used for coloristic effect instead of functional purpose. Changes of tempo and texture provide minor contrast in character. I will now play Mongolian folk tune variations. Wu Kui was written during Zhou's last year of study at CCMB. While a student, Zhou studied Bartók's approach to writing for piano, and this has a lasting influence on his compositional style. This work is the first in which he used the piano as a percussive instrument. Throughout the piece, Zhou applies irregular, unique rhythmic motifs and dissonant harmonies that are influenced by Manzhou folk dance, Wu Kui dance. The work abounds in inventive pianistic writing and presents a new compositional direction. Influence of Wu Kui dance, folk dance rhythm, and traditional instruments. In the native religion Samanism, Wu Kui dance is a Manzhou folk masked dance originally from the northeast of ancient China. It was used for celebration after hunting or harvests. Tiger, leopard, bear, deer, and roe deer are the 5 animals related to Wu Kui. The music of traditional Manzhou dance is strong rhythmic and feather indigenous wind, string, and percussion instruments. Irregular rhythmic patterns are typical. Inspired by this folk dance, Zhou's Wu Kui exploits innovative rhythmic motifs and imitates the indigenous percussion and wind instruments. The influence of the guqin, an ancient Chinese plunk string instrument, can be found in the slow middle section. The guqin has a small and intimate dynamic range. Therefore, sections that imitate that instrument are marked unicorda. As seen in example 1, the lyricism in the right hand and the accented left hand note are comparable to the plunking of this stringed instrument. Notice the tranquillo and quarter notes equals 56 without bar lines for over 20 beats, which creates a quasi-improvisational effect influenced by guqin. I will now play an excerpt of guqin music. General observations and stylistic influence. Wu Kui is in ternary form. It opens with the animated rhythmic pattern, transitions to a slow, free-flowing and lyrical middle section, and concludes with the return of the fierce, exultant rhythms and motifs of the beginning. Thematic ideas are repeated and varied, and the tempi and rhythmic contents alter frequently within each section. Zhou emphasized the sense of forward momentum and increasing the rhythmic energy by using accent markings, which obviates the notational need to change meters. This compositional technique was atypical of Chinese composer in the 1980s. The use of irregular rhythm copies the dance movement of 5 animals. In Wu Kui, Zhou treats the piano like a multifaceted percussion instrument, a compositional approach he applied to many compositions written after Wu Kui. The percussive piano sound in Wu Kui are used to great effect to evoke the indigenous dance qualities. Wu Kui has no key signature, and an ambiguous sense of tonality is created through avoiding functional harmony progressions. The overlapping layers of coda harmonies remind the audience of timbres and harmonies produced by Chinese percussion instruments. This is well illustrated in example 2, where percussively articulated chords built from the perfect fourth interval a present with accents to create irregular rhythmic patterns. I will now play example 2. As stated earlier, Zhou's compositional style of wuhui was heavily influenced by Bartók. Following Bartók's approach, Zhou included folk elements, irregular rhythmic patterns, and accents, frequent change of meter and or passage without bar lines and time signatures, and absence of key signatures, unresolved dissonance, and percussive effects. In addition to Bartók's influence, Zhou stated he was inspired by George Crumb. The inclusion of extended piano technique in wuhui marked Zhou's first foray into this arena. But the first recording was fraught with difficulties. In China during that time, pianists were prohibited from touching the inside of the piano without wearing rubber gloves. Zhou published 3 editions that are significantly different. The first edition was published in China upon completion, but did not have the co-modal section from measure 135 to 142, nor the arialso section that include extended piano technique in measure 143. In my interview with the composer, he stated that both his professor and the publisher suggested him to cut this section. They thought it was too slow, too loud, and did not fit the style of the whole piece. In the second edition, Zhou added bar line from measure 129 through 143, but removed them again in the third edition and made many corrections. In this lecture recital, I am working from the third edition published in 2010. Technical challenges. Much of the piece is marked P to 3 piece. Therefore, sustaining the music architecture is quite a challenge. Dynamic level and accents must be precisely controlled. In example 3, the tempo is very fast for the right hand sextuplets, and the pianist need to make good use of the wrist motion and the hand rotation to avoid tightness of the arm. When the left hand melody emerges in the same register, the right hand must drop down in dynamic in order to highlight the melody. I will now play example 3. Passages with complex dynamic markings in different voices can present challenge to the performers. In example 4, the pianist must be very clear with the dynamics and the pedaling in order to stay true to the composer's intentions. I will now play example 4. There are many large leaps in this work that present formidable challenge to the pianist. In example 5, the left hand plays fortissimo while leaping. The added weight to achieve the fortissimo further complicated the precision and accuracy. I will now play example 5. I will now perform Wu Kui. Zhou incorporated Chinese percussion instruments, 2 Chinese opera guns, into a solo piano composition. In this work, the pianist is tasked with playing both piano and 2 Chinese opera guns at the same time. So here's the 2 guns I'm gonna play with my left hand. Okay, and so this is a great, which is a great challenge for the pianists. So beyond the inclusion of the guns, The piano is treated as a percussion instrument throughout this piece. The composer draws his idea and sound palette from the percussion ensemble of Beijing Opera. Wen Wu Chang in Beijing Opera and accompaniment instruments. In Beijing Opera, there are two types of musical accompaniments. Melodic instrumental accompaniment called Wen Chang and percussive instrumental accompaniment called Wu Chang. Wen Wu Chang is the collaborative name of the entire chamber orchestra. The compositional content of piano gang is based most on the percussion ensemble of Wu Chang. To provide more detail, Wen Chang mainly consistent of string, wind, and field percussion instrument. In contrast, Wu Chang consistently primarily of percussion instruments. Included are the 大锣 big gun, 挠拨 cymbals, 小锣 small gun, and the 鼓板 drum and bamboo clippers. 大锣 big gun is usually played on the strum beats to support the rhythmic pattern played by the 鼓板. The 挠拨 cymbals assist the rhythmic structure and patterns and are usually used on the weaker beats. The cymbals may produce super rising effect and can be used in celebrations, military plays, or to announce the entrance of important figures from the opera. 小锣, the small guns, has a racing tone color, which is often associated with the entrance of the secondary character on stage. Specifically, the female character role of Dan and the clone characters Zhou. The 鼓板, drum and bamboo clippers, is usually played between scenes or after period of singings, and it lets the audience know that something different is coming. It is also played as the climax of a scene or movement and includes a series of fast moving drum rolls, often leading the whole percussion ensemble through a tempo change. The pageantry of the Beijing Opera, as described above, is depicted throughout piano guns. Although Zhou did not use the 挠拨 and 鼓板 directly in piano guns, he used the piano to replicate the various sound effects they produced. Here is a brief sound example of Wu Chang. Here's the mainly Wen Chang, because those are the melodic instrument accompaniment. Here's the beginning of Wu Chang. Mainly by percussion instruments. Overall structure and materials in piano guns. This piece is in binary form with a coda. According to the composers, a piano gun is based on three basic materials. Material A, a fast repetitive rhythm imitating the drum rolls, see example 1. Material B, a series of chords based on the combination of a major thread and a perfect fourth, see example 2. And material C, an active and energetic staccato motive, see example 3. This idea evokes the distinctive sonorities of a Chinese percussion ensemble, include drums, gongs, cymbals, bells, and chimes. I will now play these three materials, example 1, 2, and 3. Here's example 1. Example 2. Example 3. In material B, a series of descending chords reflect harmonic influence from both east and west. According to Zhou, the combination of a major thread and a perfect fourth in this chord imitates the sound of chimes and produces impressionistic characteristics with a predominant eastern flavor. Zhou indicated that the unique harmonic sequence imitates the distinct overtone of two ancient Chinese chimes, the qing, made of stone, and the zhong, made of bronze. I will now play a video demonstrating the zhong and qing. The higher voice you can hear from the recording is the qing. And the lower voice now you can hear is the zhong. This material recurs throughout the piece in many forms, often changing in its presentation to ascending and descending broken chord arpeggios, like in example 4 and 5. Material C serve as a recurrent interruption that contrasts and separates the various musical ideas. Organized with the chromatic 5-finger pattern, the tightly organized motif exploits articulated and accented 8 and 16 note rhythmic patterns. Zhou Long's signature music language. There are similar motifs that appear in both piano gongs and the final piece in this program, piano bells. From the interview I conducted with Zhou Long, he indicated those were part of what he refers to as his signature musical language. The composer recalled that the idea of bell motifs came to him during his travel in the Lake Como area of Italy. There were many villages around the lake, and the church bells rung at various times. Zhou noted his impression of these bell sounds, and they eventually become a hallmark of his compositional style. Piano gongs, piano bells, his piano concerto postures, and some of his string ensemble pieces all feather bell sounds prominently. I will now discuss shared motifs that appear in both piano gongs and piano bells. Contributing to this signature music language are what Zhou refers to as gong chords and bell harmonies. Gong chords imitates big gong sound effects achieved through repeating dissonant accented chord clusters, as seen in example 6. I will now play example 6. In contrast, the bell harmonies as in example 7 are quiet, calm, and employ a thinner but more sustained texture. To mimic tolling bells as it far away in distant winds, Zhou exploiting minor seconds, major seconds, and minor ninths, staggered rhythmically. I will now play example 7. Another recurring compositional feature found in both piano gongs and piano bells is the imitation of percussive bird cries. In example 8, the bird cry motif is transformed through the use of extended piano technique. The left hand is used to mute the string, and the die stroke percussive effect sounds similar to a plunk Chinese string instrument. Die stroke is percussion language refers to a muting of a percussion instrument after being stuck. I will now play example 8. Other materials imitating Chinese percussion instruments. In example 9, Zhou uses cluster of notes in quick alternation, creating the timbre and generating overtone that imitates gongs and cymbals. Similarly, Zhou adds non-chord tones to the series of descending chords in example 10. The alternating dissonant piano chords are played by the right hand, and the die stroke on the big gong are played by the left hand. The result classing effect is similar to that achieved by daluo, big gong, and naobo, cymbals in Beijing opera. I will now play example 9 and 10. Here's example 9. And example 10. Technical challenges in piano gongs. Piano gong is a physically and technically demanding piece, requiring extensive coordination of the body, arms, and hands. As a native Chinese musician, I can assure you that this is my first time playing the gongs. Beyond the technique challenges, the pianist must musically control and balance the dynamic level of the gongs. We can see in example 11 that Zhou used a plus mark to indicate a dead stroke. A dead stroke signified that the gong should be stuck with the mallet, then muted immediately with the hand. At a faster tempo, it is a challenge for the pianist to switch techniques between the dead stroke note and the regular notes. I will now play example 11. Second note passage such as those in example 11 are challenging to play clearly and evenly at a required tempo. Fingering preference tend to be quite individual, but experimentation with varied combinations and hand positions is certainly needed to achieve technical mastery of these passages. I will now perform piano gongs. piano composition. In this piece, he continued exploring the temporal and figurative possibilities of the piano imitation Chinese percussion instruments. The compositional idea of piano bells was based on a legend that referenced the frost bells from the classical of mountains and seas, 山海经. In this legend, the frost bells are ancient bells located in mountain valleys that run by themselves without being stuck. Usually after being frosted by cold weathers, Chinese poets and artists have been creatively inspired by the frost bells for more than 1,000 years, often depicting the sound quality as hollow, vast, and mysterious. Frost bells. In piano bells, Zhou used quick arpeggiating and scalar patterns to represent the sound of self-running frost bells. The decent chromatic rating, brisk tempo, and soft dynamic level help evoke the imagery of a cold and haunting weather environment. In example 1, faster running scale motifs depict twinkling frost bells. These scale motifs usually consistent of 5-finger formation with chromatic tones in both hands. Each hand play at a different register of the piano. I will now play example 1. In example 2, frost bells are imitating with a fast descending arpeggiating pattern. Rippling passages such as this, both ascending and descending, occur numerous times. I will now play example 2. To add contrast to the frost bell effects, Zhou also includes large bell sounds, which he refers to as night bells. In the first 2 measures of this piece, the sound of this large bell is produced with the extended piano technique. With the sustained pedal depressed, the pianist is instructed to play a descending fingernail glissando on the strings, spanning the range of almost 2 octaves that begin quietly and grows rapidly. Emerging from this glissando, the pianist uses the palm of the hand to stroke an accent cluster chord marked double crescendo, evoking the night bells. In measure 2, after 5 repetitions of this technique, the pianist played an additional 6 glissando cluster chord figuration with the diminuendo to pianissimo. The passage conveys a sense of the bells ringing fading away while echoing across the valley. I will now play example 3. example 4, Zhou once again imitating the large bells, but in this case, they are tolling far away in distance. I will now play example 4. Interaction between my bells and frost bells. Sometimes Zhou writes sections where the my bells and frost bells simultaneously sound. In example 5, the left-hand sustained notes evoke the my bells, in counterpoint to the right-hand running scale motif that conjure frost bells. I will now play example 5. Zhou Long's signature music language in piano bells. As discussed previously in piano gongs, there are particular recurrent motifs that, according to Zhou, make up his signature musical language. Bell harmonies, showing here in example 6. Gong chords, showing here in example 7. And bird cries, showing here in example 8. Please notice that the bird cries in example 8 are transformed to move in contra motion and are excluded at the opposite end of the keyboard. I will now play example 8. Challenges for pianists. The combination of extended piano technique in piano bells present a significant challenge for the pianist. In example 3, it is difficult to switch quickly between the glissando on the nail and the striking the string with the palm. Furthermore, the physical structure of the instrument impedes motion, and it can take time to find the correct position to strike the strings. This picture illustrates the confined area used inside the piano. Additionally, to obtain the bell sound effect, the pianist must find the most comfortable, effective, and least painful part of the hand to strike the strings. For me, it is the front part of the palm. Also, the pianist should always strike the string with the same hand position to control the consistency of sound. Dynamic changes are controlled by the strings of each streak. Another challenge illustrated in example 9 is the playing of sustained soft trill passage while playing in running chromatic notes in the other hand. This passage requires control and coordination. Zhou suggested the pianist treat the long trills in a melodic sustained fashion, with good phrasing direction, breathing, and the ability to highlight the changed melodic notes at the subtle dynamic level. I will now play example 9. dynamic contrast occur throughout in this work. In example 10, the dynamic level changes 4 times within 3 measures as a faster tempo. The pianist master exerts careful planning and precise control to successfully deliver this dynamic contrast in performance. I will now play example 10. Tempo and interpretation suggestions. Towards the end of this work, the mad bells appears twice very softly, as though they were fading away at a great distance. Controlling the dense yet extremely soft texture in the pedaling over an extended period of time is a great challenge. The composer acknowledged these difficulties and suggested that starting at a louder dynamic level could help with overall control of decay. Zhou stated in the interview that a pianist's imagination is of prominent importance of discovering the character of the mad bells and the frost bells. He suggested the tempo and dynamic markings are suggestions, not firm requirements. When performing this piece, the pianist should keep in mind the source of the inspiration and should be creatively expressive with tempo, phrasing, and the dynamics. The key aesthetic aim should be to create the sound effect that Zhou described in his program notes, and to enjoy the sonorities in both the instrument and the concert hall. I will now perform the final piece of today's program, Piano Bells. lecture and performance of Zhou Long's complete solo piano works, and I have gained both insight and appreciations of Zhou's compositional style. In the future, I will consider publishing a recording of Zhou's complete solo piano works and conduct further research that explore his music in more depth. Zhou mentioned in our interview that he will continue developing percussive elements and unique sonorities in his piano compositions. However, he also expressed interest in rap piano music with a more melodic focus. I look forward to continue my exploration of Zhou's music in the coming years. Thank you. Donuts and drinks in the front desk of the house, so please take some with you. Yeah, thank you.